I never imagined that at 72 years old, I would face the most humiliating moment of my life at my own son's wedding. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family, respect, and finding strength in the darkest moments. If you're ready to discover how one woman turned her greatest embarrassment into her most powerful moment, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. My name is Eleanor Whitman, and I had been looking forward to this day for months. My youngest son, Michael, was finally getting married to Sarah, a lovely girl from Connecticut whom he had met during his residency at Hartford Hospital. As I stood in front of my bedroom mirror that Saturday morning in June, adjusting the navy blue dress I had carefully chosen for the occasion, I felt a mixture of pride and bittersweet joy that only a mother could understand. At 72, I had raised 3 children as a single mother after my husband passed away when they were still young. Michael was my baby, the one who had always been closest to me. He would call me every Sunday without fail, visit during holidays, and include me in his important life decisions. Or so I thought. The wedding was being held at the prestigious Riverside Country Club in Greenwich, Connecticut. Sarah's family had insisted on handling all the arrangements, which I appreciated since my pension didn't exactly allow for such extravagances. I had offered to contribute what I could, but Sarah's mother, Patricia Hamilton, had politely declined with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I arrived at the venue 2 hours early, wanting to help with any last-minute preparations. The morning was perfect, sunny with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of the rose garden where the ceremony would take place. I wore my late husband's wedding ring on a chain around my neck, a small comfort that helped me feel his presence on this important day. The country club was everything I had imagined and more. Manicured lawns stretched toward the Long Island Sound, and the clubhouse itself was an impressive colonial-style building with white columns and ivy-covered walls. Inside, the ballroom had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, with crystal chandeliers, white linens, and centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath. As I walked through the reception area, I noticed the seating chart displayed on an elegant easel. I searched for my name, expecting to find myself at the family table near the bride and groom. Instead, I found my name at table 12, tucked away in a corner near the kitchen doors. I told myself it was probably just an oversight, that with so many guests, mistakes were bound to happen. Patricia Hamilton approached me with her usual practiced smile. She was a woman in her early 50s, impeccably dressed in a champagne-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly income. Her blonde hair was styled in a perfect chignon, and her jewelry caught the light as she moved. "Eleanor, darling, you look lovely," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone that wealthy people use when they're being polite, but not particularly warm. "I hope you don't mind, but we had to make some adjustments to the seating arrangement at the last minute. You know how these things go." I nodded, not wanting to cause any trouble on Michael's special day. "Of course, Patricia. I'm just happy to be here." The ceremony itself was beautiful. Michael looked handsome in his black tuxedo, his dark hair neatly styled, and his eyes bright with happiness. Sarah was radiant in her grandmother's vintage lace dress, her veil flowing behind her like a cloud. As I watched them exchange vows, tears streamed down my face. This was my little boy, the one who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, now promising to love and cherish another woman for the rest of his life. After the ceremony, guests began making their way to the reception area for cocktails before dinner. I mingled as best I could, though I noticed that most of Sarah's family and friends seemed to cluster together, leaving me feeling somewhat isolated. I found myself talking mostly to Michael's college friends and a few distant relatives who had made the trip. Michael found me during the cocktail hour, wrapping me in one of his warm hugs that always made me feel like everything would be okay. "Mom, you look beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. "Thank you for being here. This means everything to me." "I wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart," I replied, smoothing down his lapel the way I had done when he was a child getting ready for school pictures. "I'm so proud of you." "I know the seating arrangement is a bit scattered," he said, looking slightly uncomfortable. Sarah's family had a lot of requests, and we tried to accommodate everyone as best we could. I squeezed his hand. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine wherever you put me." As the sun began to set, the wedding coordinator announced that dinner would be served. Guests began moving toward the ballroom, and I made my way to table 12. It was indeed in the far corner, partially hidden by a decorative screen. The other guests at my table were people I didn't recognize, apparently friends of Sarah's extended family. But as I approached my assigned seat, I stopped dead in my tracks. Where my chair should have been, there was a large silver trash can with a white bow tied around it. A small card attached to the bow read, "Eleanor's seat," in elegant calligraphy. My heart began to pound as I stared at this cruel joke. Several guests at nearby tables had noticed and were whispering among themselves, some pointing discreetly in my direction. I felt heat rise in my cheeks as the humiliation washed over me. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't an accident or a mistake. This was intentional. I stood frozen beside that trash can, my hands trembling as I held my small purse. The conversations around me seemed to fade into a buzzing noise as I tried to process what was happening. This was my son's wedding, the day I had been looking forward to for months, and someone had decided to humiliate me in front of a room full of strangers. A woman at the next table leaned over to her companion and whispered something that made them both look in my direction with poorly concealed amusement. I felt my face burning with embarrassment, but I refused to let them see me cry. Not here. Not now. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" I turned to see a man in his 60s approaching our table. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and wore a well-tailored dark suit. His name tag identified him as Dr. James Morrison, and I later learned he was Sarah's uncle. "I believe there's been some sort of mistake with the seating arrangement," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I gestured toward the trash can with its mocking white bow. Dr. Morrison's face darkened as he took in the scene. "This is absolutely unacceptable," he said firmly. "Let me find someone to fix this immediately." Before I could respond, Sarah's younger brother Kevin appeared at my elbow. He was about 25, with the kind of smug expression that suggested he found the situation amusing rather than appalling. "Oh, that's not a mistake," he said with a laugh that made my stomach turn. "That's Eleanor's special seat. Sarah thought it would be funny since she's always talking about how she feels like the family's taking out the trash when Michael's mom visits." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my knees go weak, and I had to steady myself against the table. This wasn't just a cruel prank by some thoughtless young person. This was orchestrated, planned, and apparently approved by my future daughter-in-law. Dr. Morrison's face had gone from concerned to furious. "Kevin, you need to fix this right now. This is someone's mother, and she deserves to be treated with respect." "Oh, come on, Uncle Jim," Kevin replied, still grinning. "It's just a joke. Can't the old lady take a joke?" That's when I found my voice. Something deep inside me, something that had been building for months of feeling excluded and dismissed, finally erupted. "I am not the old lady," I said, my voice carrying across the nearby tables. "I am Eleanor Whitman. I am Michael's mother. I worked 2 jobs to put that boy through medical school. I held his hand through every nightmare, every heartbreak, every triumph. I have been nothing but kind and welcoming to your sister, and this is how your family chooses to repay that kindness?" The room had grown quiet around us. Guests at nearby tables had stopped their conversations to watch this unexpected drama unfold. I could see Michael across the room, deep in conversation with the photographer, oblivious to what was happening. Dr. Morrison placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Whitman, please, let me get you a proper chair. This is completely unacceptable." But I wasn't finished. Something had broken open inside me, and words that had been trapped for months came pouring out. "Do you know what I did yesterday?" I continued, my voice growing stronger. "I spent 8 hours making homemade cookies for the welcome bags because Sarah mentioned she loved my snickerdoodles. I drove 3 hours to pick up the flowers for the church because the florist made a mistake with the order. I have spent months trying to be helpful, trying to be the mother-in-law that wouldn't be a burden, that wouldn't cause problems." Kevin's smirk was beginning to fade as he realized that other guests were staring at him with obvious disapproval. Patricia Hamilton had appeared at the edge of our little circle, her face pale as she took in the scene. "I raised my son to be a good man," I continued, my voice now carrying clearly across the reception. I taught him to respect his elders, to treat people with kindness, to stand up for what's right. And if he allows this to happen to his own mother, then I have failed as a parent. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the soft classical music playing in the background, the distant sound of waves against the shore, and the uncomfortable shuffling of feet as guests tried to decide where to look. That's when I saw Michael pushing through the crowd, his face a mixture of confusion and growing alarm as he took in the scene. Behind him, Sarah followed, her wedding dress rustling as she hurried to catch up. "Mom, what's going on?" Michael asked, his eyes moving from my face to the trash can to his new brother-in-law's guilty expression. I looked at my son, this man I had raised and loved and sacrificed for, and I felt my heart breaking. "Ask your wife," I said quietly. Michael's eyes moved from me to the trash can, and I watched as understanding dawned on his face. The color drained from his cheeks as he realized what had happened. He turned to Sarah, who was standing behind him in her beautiful white dress, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "Sarah, what is this?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous in a way I had never heard before. "Michael, I can explain," Sarah began, but her voice was shaky and uncertain. "It was supposed to be funny. Kevin said it would be harmless, just a little joke to break the ice." "A joke?" Michael's voice rose, and other guests began to turn their attention toward us. "You thought it would be funny to humiliate my mother at our wedding?" Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his face grave. "Michael, I think you need to know that this appears to have been planned. Your brother-in-law just told your mother that Sarah specifically requested this because she felt like the family was taking out the trash when your mother visited." The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. Michael turned to look at his new wife, his face a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "Sarah, tell me he's lying," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me you didn't say that about my mother." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she couldn't meet his gaze. "I didn't mean it like that," she whispered. I was frustrated. Your mother is so involved in everything, and I felt like I couldn't plan my own wedding without her input." "Her input?" I couldn't help but speak up. "Sarah, every time you asked for my opinion, I told you that whatever made you happy was fine with me. The only time I offered suggestions was when you specifically asked for them." "But you were always there," Sarah said, turning to face me with tears streaming down her face. "Every time we went to look at venues, every time we met with vendors, you were there. I felt like I couldn't breathe without you watching and judging everything I did." I felt as if I had been slapped. "I was there because Michael asked me to be there. He said you wanted my support, that you were nervous about planning such a big event." Michael ran his hands through his hair, clearly devastated. "Sarah, I asked Mom to come to those meetings because I thought it would help you feel more comfortable. I told you she was good at organizing things, that she could help keep track of details." "Well, I didn't want her help," Sarah said, her voice rising. "I wanted to plan my own wedding with my own family, and instead I had to pretend to be grateful for the interference of a woman who clearly doesn't approve of me." "I've never said or done anything to suggest I don't approve of you," I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest. "I have welcomed you into our family. I have tried to be supportive and helpful. If you interpreted that as judgment, then I apologize, but that was never my intention." The crowd around us had grown larger. I could see Patricia Hamilton standing with her husband, both of them looking mortified. Other guests were whispering among themselves, some looking sympathetic, others appearing uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding before them. Michael looked around at the faces staring at us, then back at his wife. "Sarah, even if you felt that way, how could you think this was an appropriate response? This is my mother. She raised me. She sacrificed everything for me, and you thought it would be funny to humiliate her at our wedding?" "It wasn't supposed to be humiliating," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Kevin said it would be a harmless prank, something we could all laugh about later." "A harmless prank?" Dr. Morrison spoke up again. "Young lady, there is nothing harmless about publicly humiliating an elderly woman at a family celebration. This is cruel and thoughtless, and frankly, it reflects poorly on how you were raised." Patricia Hamilton finally found her voice. "James, please." This is a misunderstanding that got out of hand. I'm sure we can work this out. Can we? Michael turned to his mother-in-law. Patricia, did you know about this? The silence that followed was answer enough. Patricia's face flushed red as she realized she had been caught. Kevin mentioned something about a surprise for Eleanor, she admitted quietly. I thought it was something nice, like a special recognition or a gift. I had no idea it was this. But you didn't ask, I said, my voice filled with a sadness that seemed to come from the depths of my soul. None of you asked. You just assumed that I would be a good sport about being made a fool of in front of a room full of strangers. I looked around at the faces surrounding me. Some sympathetic, some embarrassed, some still seemed to think this was merely an overreaction to a harmless prank. I realized that I had spent 72 years trying to be the kind of person who didn't cause trouble, who went along with things to keep the peace, who put everyone else's comfort before her own dignity. Michael, I said, turning to my son, I love you more than life itself, but I will not stand here and pretend that this is acceptable. I will not smile and laugh and pretend that your wife's cruelty is something I should just get over. I picked up my purse from the table where I had set it down when this nightmare began. My hands were steadier now, my voice stronger. I am going to leave now, I announced to the group. I will not ruin your wedding reception by staying and making everyone uncomfortable. But I want you all to remember this moment. I want you to remember that this is how you chose to treat a woman who has spent her entire life putting her family first. As I turned to leave, I felt a hand on my arm. I looked up to see Dr. Morrison, his kind eyes filled with concern. Mrs. Whitman, please don't go, he said gently. This is your son's wedding. You belong here more than anyone else. James, please, Patricia Hamilton said, stepping forward. Let's not make this worse than it already is. But Dr. Morrison wasn't finished. He turned to address the crowd that had gathered around us, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. I want everyone here to listen carefully, he began. What happened here tonight is not a harmless prank. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a deliberate act of cruelty toward a woman who has done nothing but love and support her son. He gestured toward me with respect. Mrs. Whitman has spent months helping with this wedding. She has been nothing but gracious and welcoming to our family. And in return, we have treated her with disrespect and cruelty. The crowd was silent, hanging on his every word. I could see some guests nodding in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable with the confrontation. I have been married for 37 years, Dr. Morrison continued. I have learned that the way a family treats its most vulnerable members says everything about their character. Tonight, we have failed that test miserably. Patricia Hamilton's husband, Robert, stepped forward. James is right, he said, his voice heavy with shame. This is not who we are as a family. This is not how we were raised to treat people. He turned to me, his face sincere. Mrs. Whitman, I apologize on behalf of my family. What happened here tonight is inexcusable, and I am deeply sorry. I felt tears threatening again, but these were different tears. These were tears of recognition, of finally being seen and heard. Thank you, I said simply. Michael had been standing silently through this exchange, his face a mixture of pain and determination. Finally, he spoke. Mom, I need you to know that I had nothing to do with this. I would never have allowed it if I had known. I know that, sweetheart, I replied, reaching up to touch his face. I know the man I raised, and this isn't him. He turned to Sarah, who had been standing quietly, tears streaming down her face. Sarah, I need you to understand something. My mother is not negotiable. She is part of my life, and she will always be part of my life. If you can't respect that, then we have a serious problem. Sarah looked up at him, then at me, then at the crowd of people watching this family drama unfold. I could see the moment when she realized that this wasn't just about a wedding prank anymore. This was about the kind of person she wanted to be, the kind of family she wanted to be part of. Mrs. Whitman, she said, her voice shaking, I am so sorry. I was wrong. I was selfish and cruel, and I am deeply, deeply sorry. She looked around at the crowd, then back at me. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life making this right. I studied her face. looking for sincerity, for genuine remorse. What I saw was a young woman who had made a terrible mistake and was truly sorry for it. "Sarah," I said quietly, "we all make mistakes. The measure of our character is not whether we stumble, but whether we get back up and do better." Dr. Morrison stepped forward again. "Mrs. Whitman, I would be honored if you would sit at our family table for the rest of the evening. You deserve to be treated with the respect and dignity that you have always shown to others." As if a spell had been broken, several other guests began to speak up. One of Michael's college friends offered to give up his seat at the head table. Sarah's grandmother, a tiny woman with silver hair and fierce eyes, announced that she would be switching tables to sit with me. "I didn't raise my granddaughter to be cruel," she said firmly, "but I did raise her to know how to apologize and make amends." The wedding coordinator appeared with staff members carrying proper chairs. The trash can was quickly removed, and within minutes I found myself seated at a table with people who genuinely wanted me there. As the evening progressed, something remarkable happened. The incident that had started as my most humiliating moment began to transform into something else entirely. Guests who had witnessed the confrontation made a point of coming over to speak with me, to thank me for my grace under pressure, to share their own stories of family difficulties and reconciliation. Dr. Morrison sat beside me during dinner, and we talked about his work as a pediatric surgeon, about the books we had both read, about the challenges of aging with dignity in a youth-obsessed culture. I realized that I had found not just respect, but genuine friendship. Sarah's grandmother, whose name was Rose, told me stories about her own experiences as a young bride, about the mistakes she had made and the lessons she had learned. She was sharp and funny, and reminded me of my own mother in the best possible way. Even Sarah made an effort throughout the evening. She stopped by our table several times, each time seeming more genuine and less defensive. During the father-daughter dance, she asked if I would join her and her father for a few moments. "I want everyone to see that you are part of this family," she said, her eyes still red from crying. "I want them to know that I respect you and value you." As the evening wound down, Michael found me sitting on the terrace overlooking the water. The lights of the reception twinkled behind us, and the sound of laughter and music drifted through the French doors. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, sitting down beside me. I considered the question carefully. A few hours ago, I would have said no. I would have said that I was heartbroken and humiliated and ready to give up on the whole idea of family harmony. But sitting there in the cool night air, surrounded by the warmth of unexpected friendships and genuine apologies, I realized that I was more than okay. I was proud of myself for standing up for my dignity, for refusing to accept unacceptable treatment, for speaking my truth even when it was difficult. "I'm better than okay," I told him. "I'm proud of the man you've become, and I'm hopeful about the woman your wife is becoming." He squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on us." "Never," I replied. "Family is worth fighting for, even when it's messy and complicated and sometimes breaks your heart." As I drove home that night, I reflected on the strange journey the day had taken. What had begun as the worst moment of my life had somehow transformed into one of the most empowering. I had learned that I was stronger than I thought, that my voice mattered, that standing up for myself didn't make me difficult or ungrateful. It made me human. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the most beautiful moments come not from perfection, but from the willingness to be honest, to be vulnerable, and to believe that people can change and grow and become better versions of themselves. The trash can incident, as it came to be known in family lore, became a turning point not just for me, but for everyone involved. It forced us all to examine our assumptions, our behaviors, and our capacity for growth. And in the end, it brought us closer together than we had ever been before.